بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. Assalamu alaikum everybody, my name is Yasmin. I have about 15 years of experience in community care, mentorship, and counseling. Today I want to talk about something that comes up a lot with my clients, which is the subject of boundaries. And in this case, I actually like to title the way that I approach boundaries as the art of loving boundaries. So the reason I like to approach boundaries with this title of the art of loving boundaries is because the way I've seen boundaries being approached in the popular zeitgeist lately has been sort of along the lines of being harsh, being dismissive of the other person, sort of pushing people away. And it doesn't align with our understanding of, the compassionate nature of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. We're also taught to honor and respect people, especially to honor and respect our parents. And so what do you do when you need to implement a boundary with someone like a parent, someone that you are commanded to respect and honor? What do you do when you need to draw some boundaries with people that you need to maintain positive relations with? The good news is that you don't have to approach your relationships in a self-sacrificial manner. The good news is that there is always going to be a way for you to be able to ask for your needs in a relationship while also meeting the needs and the requirements of fulfilling your part of the relationship that you're trying to honor. So let's start off with defining what a boundary is in the first place. A boundary is not telling someone what to do or what not to do. I know it sounds a little counterintuitive, but bear with me here. So a boundary is not something that you are telling someone to do. You're not dictating how someone chooses to interact with you. You actually have no control over other people's behaviors. A boundary is actually something that you do for yourself in order to take care of yourself. It's something that you have to, a new kind of behavior that you are engaging in order to make the relationship more sustainable for you. We'll get into some examples of what I mean by this later on in the video. So begin with step one, which is identify what the relationship is and how important that relationship is to you. It's important to identify how important that relationship is to you because sometimes we may find ourselves in a place where we're bending over backwards doing something that we don't want to do for someone who we don't actually have a very important connection to, for someone who actually doesn't really impact our lives in any kind of significant way. And if you find that that's the case, then you might have a people-pleasing tendency that you might need to look at. You might find that it's a relationship that's related to family, a spouse, work. Identify why that relationship is important to you. And if it is important to you, get into a place where you can start to feel the sentiment or the passion or the drive for why this relationship is so important to you. This is how we're going to actually start the conversation with that person. Number two, identify the problematic dynamic in the relationship. Now, if you have a more complex relationship with more history, you might find that there's several different problematic dynamics, in which case you're going to have to set several different boundaries with this. Now, as you do this exercise and you're writing through all the steps, just know that you're writing it down first. You're not just jumping in and trying to remember all these steps in your head. It's not gonna fare out very well. What do I mean by a problematic dynamic? I mean, what is the dance that you are in with your person that you need to place a boundary with? And so the reason I'm doing this sort of motion is when we are in a relationship where there's a problematic dynamic, we are sort of in a dance. You guys have been very used to a very specific way of being with each other. It becomes an unconscious thing because y'all have been doing this dance for a long time. And you're finding it exhausting, and maybe they even find it exhausting, but you guys just can't stop to you guys just can't stop getting out of this loop that you're in. That's the bad news. The good news is that it takes two for this dance to happen. So if someone stops, then that dance can't happen anymore. You don't have to keep doing that dance. Why does this dance happen? Think about that with yourself. Why do I participate in this dance? Number 3, and this is what I think makes this the art of a loving boundary. Assume good intent. Why in this person's universe are they doing this thing that you find difficult, that is stressful for you, that you wouldn't normally do for yourself, but they're doing it? Think about it from their world. And this is going to require you to dig in and have some empathy for that person. And that can be difficult if you're struggling with resentment. If you're struggling with this step, you're struggling with resentment, reach out to me. We can book a session and talk more detail about it. Some questions that I think are helpful to ask yourself is, what need is being met when they do this behavior? Or what do they think they're helping me with by doing this behavior? I'll give you an example. My mother comments on my weight. I don't want her to comment on my weight anymore. Now, if I'm digging into my empathy, I will think to myself, okay, my mother thinks, it doesn't matter if you agree or disagree with it, right? You need to get into her head and her mindset. My mom thinks she's helping me by pointing out my weight. My mom thinks she's making me aware of something that I'm not aware of. Now, what your opinion is on the idea of weight, the fact that she has beauty standards that you don't even agree with, is irrelevant. You're going into her universe. In her universe, she comes from a universe in which a woman's appearance and her weight is tied inextricably to her value in her society, which is tied inextricably to her safety in this world. Why does this person shout when we're getting into an argument? This person is frustrated. They feel like they're not being heard, so they end up shouting, right? We're not justifying the behavior. We are explaining in their minds why they go to that behavior. Number 4, identify what the natural consequence is. If this relationship dynamic, the dance, continues as it's going, what could potentially happen as a result? How is it impacting me? How is it impacting the person that I'm with? How is it impacting our relationship? For example, the natural consequence of my mother always making comments about my weight is that I start to feel bad about myself. Or I start to feel like I can't just be myself around my mom without expecting some criticism. I'm perceiving it as a criticism, right? Even if she doesn't mean it as a criticism. Make sure you use I statements. Whenever you do X behavior, I feel Y emotion. This is really important to mention after number 3 of assuming positive intent, because assuming positive intent will lower the defensiveness that the person you're talking to might start to feel. So you start off by saying, Mom, I understand, like, you feel like you're looking out for me when you remind me of my weight. I know you just want me to be healthy. I know you want me to just be beautiful. I know you know that, like, this world can be very harsh towards people who are of a specific weight, and you don't want that to happen to me. I get it. But, and then you go to number 4, but whenever you comment it to me, I just feel like I can't relax around you. I feel criticized by you. I feel hurt. It hurts my self-esteem. What it does is it creates a relationship between us where I am constantly on edge waiting for you to make a comment about my appearance, right? And I know you don't want that. Continuing with the positive intent. I know that that's not what you're looking for. I know that that's not the best outcome that you want for our relationship. This makes me feel stressed. It doesn't make me feel relaxed. And then I find myself coming over less. I find myself distancing myself from you. So you're not threatening to distance yourself. You're just saying that's the natural consequence that ends up happening. When I'm repeatedly feeling like I'm being criticized, I naturally distance myself from that situation. It's a very human thing. Now I can give some other examples. Let's say it's a professional environment. My boss is putting way too much on my plate and is giving me too many tight deadlines. You start off with positives, appreciation, and pointing out the importance of the relationship to you, the importance of the work to you. Then you go into number 2. Now, what's been happening is I noticed that you've been giving me a week at a time to complete large projects. I have been getting notifications to do this task and this task at this deadline when I have another deadline due, right? You're identifying what the problematic dynamic is. And then 3, you assume the good intent. And I understand you're doing that because you want to push our team to the next milestone. I know we have a lot of aggressive goals for Q4. I know that you might potentially, and also this is a really good segue into the empathy piece. You might not have all the information about what is required for the empathy. So you can say, are you getting pressure from your boss? Is like, what's happening for you that's making you kind of implement all of these really tight deadlines? And then number 4, identify the natural consequence, which is, I would love to do all these assignments, but if that's the case, then I'm not going to be able to get them done well at the quality level that you need, or some things might fall through along the chain of things, or we might have to hire more team members to be able to carry this work, or whatever other natural consequence may arise. This can get tricky because you might be like, oh, my boss would never handle that. My boss would never accept any of those things. I'll get fired. If that's the case, then you might have to identify that you're in a toxic work environment and you may need to consider other options of employment if that's accessible to you. You may also be able to approach it from a cooperative way, which is like, I would love for this to get done in this timeline, in this manner. Am I able to get some more time, right? It's not necessarily I'm putting a boundary, you're not allowed to give me deadlines like this anymore with a boss. It could be like, help me help you. I want the same things that you want. How do we make this work in a way that's more sustainable so that we can reach our metrics and our goals in a more efficient manner? Because at this point, within my 40-hour work week, I'm unable to complete that task. If they expect you to work beyond your 40-hour work week without compensating you for your time, then you should probably leave and find another work situation where you're being compensated fairly for your time. Now, there's a step number 5 here, but I'm going to hold off for a second in identifying number 5. And I want you to just think about going through the flow of 1 through 4 with your person that you're trying to implement this boundary with. Just saying that something hurts your feelings might be enough for someone to stop the behavior. For some people, it might not be enough. They will continue to engage in that behavior. This is where number 5 comes in, which is identify an implemented consequence. Now, an implemented consequence is different than a natural consequence because it is something that you are choosing to implement and a behavior that you're introducing into the dynamic that helps take care of you. For example, I am going to have to hang up the phone if you're shouting at me and unable to calm down. I'm going to have to walk away if you keep shouting at me and calm myself and my nervous system down so that we can have a more productive conversation when you're feeling calmer. I'm going to have to visit you less frequently if you continue to put me down and make comments about my weight. With 1 through 4, if before you have an implemented consequence, you might have to just give gentle reminders because, again, you guys have probably been in this dance for a long time and you're trying to implement a new dance, trying to get, your person that you're relating to into a new dance with you. And the next time they see you, they might just start oh, let's go back to the way we were. And you might be like, no, we're doing this now, remember? And they might be like, oh, okay, sorry, forgot. So be patient. Give gentle and frequent and firm reminders about how something affects you and how you don't want them to do that thing. If it's constantly being repeated and it's something that's not changing, then you can start to use the implemented consequence, which is you follow through on that thing. Hey, I have to go do XYZ for myself, to step away, to create some space so that I can make sure that this relationship is sustainable. Now, in relationships where there is some emotional immaturity, a person might try a whole bunch of different tactics to get you to get back into that dance with them. They might be like, oh, well, fine, I guess I'm never going to speak to you again. They might try to guilt you, or they might try to shame you. Oh, you're really sensitive. I didn't know you were this sensitive. Whoa, excuse me. They might try to make you feel like you're distant from them. Well, oh, I just thought we were a lot closer than that. I guess we're not as close as I thought we were. All of these things are tactics to try and get you back in this dance with this person. And again, it doesn't necessarily mean, we're assuming good intent here, it doesn't mean that these people are evil. It doesn't mean that they're necessarily being manipulative intentionally, but it means that they're in a place where they're worried that they have this really familiar dance with you and there's some kind of closeness that they might get out of this familiar dance. And they feel scared, like, oh, what does it mean to now change the dance? What if I can't do the new dance? Are you going to abandon me? Are you going to leave me? Does this mean that we have a less intimate relationship with each other now because I have to think about the way I'm showing up instead of naturally showing up as I am? These are genuine concerns that people have. But that's where you step in. No matter how ridiculous it sounds that someone is saying, you just gently and firmly remind them, no, I love you. No, we are close. Maybe I am a bit sensitive and I'm okay with that. I'm sorry you feel that way. I honor, love, and respect you. And I also need to do this to make the relationship sustainable. I'm doing this because I love you. I'm doing this because I want our relationship to be better and closer and stronger, because I want us to show up with good and righteous character with each other. If you don't take your boundaries seriously, nobody else will. If you don't follow through on reminding them about the problematic behavior, or following through on your implemented consequence if it goes there, then you're sending an implicit message, an unspoken message that, you know what, my boundary is sort of not really a big deal to me, and so it doesn't have to be a big deal to you. I'm not taking it seriously, so you don't have to take it seriously. So I recommend with this format, I hope it's been helpful, write it down to yourself, write it in the form of a letter. If it's someone you know really well, you can even write down a script of what you expect them to say, and then write down how you would reply. Try to think about it, write it down, chew on it, marinate on it without fully immediately reacting to it. Work on any potential resentments you might have towards somebody so that it doesn't, come out in a way that you weren't expecting. And then try it and see how it works out. If you have any other questions or you need any more explanations, or you just have a very specific situation that you want to ask me about, just please go to my website and book a consultation with me. It's free. I'll be talking to you for half an hour, and we can maybe see how I can be of assistance to you in your situation. Assalamu alaikum. Take care.